Day, Hanu, Bay, Trey. Good morning, everybody. Am I on mute? I'm not on mute. Good morning, everybody. We are beginning test Amid Aleph. The last few words on the fourth line, Hanu, Bay, Trey. Before we get going, there is we pick up with a bit of a brisa. So towards the end of yesterday's daf, we had certain brises about the Gabbai Tzedakah and what they're allowed to do. And the brise also said that Rishayim B'nei Ha'ir, Lasos Kupa Tanchoy, they're allowed to do all sorts of different things. I was looking at the wrong spot. Where am I looking at? Rishayim B'nei Ha'ir, Lahasos Halamidos. The B'nei Ha'ir are able to make certain midos, Vala Sha'arim. They can set certain prices, Vaskar Poalim, they can set minimum wage, Ulahasiya al Kitsasan. And it says that the B'nai Ha'ir are allowed to almost like impose fines on people who go against the things that they set up. And on that note, we have this Gemara. So Hanu Beitrei Tabachi. We had certain butchers in a town. The Avdi Inyana Bahad Yadari, they made certain arrangements amongst themselves. The Cholman, the Avid, Biyom Dechabre, Nikru Lemishche. Anyone butchers, if anyone shechts animals on a day that he wasn't supposed to, he's going to be fined and they will take away the hide. So what's a little bit of the background? So in those days, they didn't have refrigeration. So whatever you shechted had to be used that day, right? And I guess town wasn't big enough for the two of them. So they had to have some arrangement of, I'm going to have Monday and you're going to have Tuesday and you're going to have this and whatever it is. And when you shechted an animal and you sold all the parts, I guess the hide belonged to the butcher. And I guess he would do whatever he was going to do. He would sell the hide. That was part of his financial model, right? And how he turned a profitable business. And the fine was, if you shecht this animal on a day that it wasn't yours, we're going to take away your hide and we're going to tear it apart. So you won't be able to profit from it. Anyway, one guy went against the custom and he shechted on a day that wasn't his. So Azal Chad Minayu Abed Biyom Dechabri. Sorry, the guy went and he shechted on a day that was his not his day. So what do? Karu Lemishche. So they fined him like they were supposed to. And they took the hide and they tore it apart. But he wasn't happy about that. So Astul came to Rava. He came before Rava and he said, look what they did to me. And Chayvinu Rava Lishlume. And Rava actually was Machayev, the people or whoever tore his hide, to pay him back the value of his hide. But Esfer Rav Yemar Bar Shalmei Rava. So Rav Yemar Bar Shalmei asked Rava Akasha. He said, kind of like how he opened the daf, said, Lasia al Kitzosam. He said, the Brisa said that these people have the ability to impose these fines and to fine people when they go against their rules. The rule was set up that if you're a butcher and you shecht an animal on a day that's not yours, they are allowed to confiscate the hide or tear apart the hide, whatever they're supposed to do with this hide. So lo ahadrele, Rava. So Rava didn't even provide a response. Amar Papa, Shapir Avid lo ahadrele midi. Rava was correct in not even providing a response. Because Hani mili echad laka adam chashuv. The only time you can take matters into your own hands and impose these fines is if you don't have an Adam Chashav in the town. If you have an Adam Chashav like Rava, so you don't need to take matters in your own hands. If you have a shayla, something comes up, you can go to Rava, and Rava will tell you what to do. So therefore, again, with so many of these rules, right, you always need to read the fine print. And sure, people have the ability to impose fines and whatever it is, but dafka, if you don't have an authority like Rava in the town. Okay. Rava was clearly, he was mechuzah, right? That's where he was the Morad Asra. And no, you're right. I mean, again, sometimes it feels like this, but you can see from the Gemaras, right? Like there were certain people, like Nachman was clearly like the posek, right? And Shmuel, right? And Harda, I mean, Rav was like all over the place. In Israel, it was Rabbi Yochanan, but certain times, right? Sheshes was certainly like in his day. I mean, he lived kind of in the same time as Rava, but clearly there were certain people in certain towns that were like the person, you know. But Rava, I mean, clearly seems like in Mechuzah at least he was the Morad Asra. I don't know that he lived next to. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, he did it by telegram. I don't know. Yeah, exactly. Tana Rabbanan Ein. So once you've appointed a gabbai tzedakah or a gizbar or a hektish, you do your due diligence in the front end. But once he's appointed, you don't need to do like a daily accounting. You have to have a sense of trust that he's doing whatever he's supposed to be doing with the money. So you don't have to like do an accounting every single week. You trust him, you hired him, and then that's what it is. Even though there's no raya, But we have a zeichel davar from Psukim Shnamar. This is, I believe, in Nehemiah. This is in reference, or Malachim. Sorry, this is in Malachim. This is in reference to the Beis Hamikdash. Below Yachduvos Anashim Shar Yidnu Es Hakesef Al Yadam L'Seis L'Osei Hamalacha Ki Be'Emuna Heimosim. This again referring to the people that were working in the Beis Hamikdash. Again, you don't need to necessarily look. The people that were trusted to pay the various people that were doing work in the Beis Hamikdash. You don't need to come with an accounting every now and again. You trust that the people, they have the money and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing with the money. And that's this idea that when you have a gizber, when you have someone who's in charge of the Gabbai Tzedakah, you don't need to every single few days be like, all right, now I need to know exactly who you gave the money to and how much, what was the process. You have to have a certain level of trust. So basically, even if you have a gizber that you do trust, but yatsur the yimna, notwithstanding, you should probably count the money before you give it to him. I mean, you don't have to have too much trust, right? You can. There's still a level of accountability or whatever it is that make sure that when you're handing him the bills, at least you know what you gave him, right? You don't just give him a whole stack of bills and be like, all right, count these, right? Shenamar, because even in those psukim in Malachim, it says yitzuru v'yimnu. They still bound the bills and then gave it to them. They didn't just give them money. Okay, Amar Rav Huna, fascinating Gemara. Bodkin lemazonos, they ain't bodkin l'ksus. So the situation. Good morning. We're about a third of the way down in Tes Amid Aleph in these intense sugyas, a lot of divrei agada, if you Yoel, about tzedakah. So Amar Rav Huna, he says bodkin lemazonos, they ain't bodkin l'ksus. So imagine you're the ark, you're the chesed fund, something like that, and the person comes in and he says, I need food and I also need clothing. So when it comes to mizonos, you got to do your due diligence. You don't just give him money for food until you know that he's someone who is really needs it. But they ain't bodkin l'ksus. But if the guy says I need clothing, you don't have to do so much research. You just give him the clothing. You buy him a kra, you buy him a svara. I'll tell you, it's. I can tell you I have a riot from a pasuk or a svara. You buy him a svara. It's high kamavzi, buy kolokambavzi. The way Rashi explains, the guy's coming in, he says arum. I love dafka arum, but the point is, the guy, you can see he doesn't have any clothing, right? So give him clothing, right? He's mabaz himself. When it comes to not having food, maybe he's in pain, but that, he's at least not a bizayon, so you can, do whatever you need, make some phone calls, make sure that he really is a worthy candidate. And you buy him a kra, or I can tell you I have a pasuk. This is a pasuk that's going to come up many times in today's daf. It's a pasuk in Yeshaya. It says, the pasuk says, I'm just going to read the whole pasuk. Hello, paros l'raiv lachmecha. Would you not break bread with the hungry, right? Va'aniyim merudim tavi bayis, and the aniyim that come to your house, would you not, give them? And kisira arum, the kisiso. When you see someone who's an arum, would you not clothe them? People that are your kin, you can't ignore, right? So hello, paros l'raiv lachmecha. The word is, would you not break bread? But the Gemara says, sin, even though it's really the word paros, breaking bread, is with a samach, but he darshan it's kind of with a sin, and therefore it's parush v'hadar havla. You should look into him, you should be mafarish, and then you should give them. V'hasam tiv, in the same pasuk it says kisira arum. If you see someone who's an arum, so just kisira la'alter, just when you see him, you don't have to do that much research. If you just see, you can clothe him. The big kasha that I'm sure Ozzy has right now is, and Ozzy doesn't have one of these fancy gemaras with the psukim on the side, but the whole drasha of paros l'raiv lachmecha is it's supposed to have said a samach, but yet it has a sin. It doesn't have a samach. It doesn't have a sin. It has a samach. So that it's a huge kasha. If you look at the Masor Shas at the top right, he says b'chol asfarim meduyakim ksiv parus v'lechor hi pliya. He doesn't understand what this whole drasha is with a sin, because the word, if you look on the side, it's with a samach. And I looked up the Yard Scroll, it's clearly a samach. So I'm not entirely clear. And again, the Mefarshim all deal with this, exactly what this drasha is. But as we'll see throughout the hemshech of the daf, this pasuk comes up 3-4 times, and almost every time it has it with a sin. So obviously there was some gear, I don't know. Either way, Rabbi Yehuda argued with Rav Huna, and he says, bodkin l'ksus, they ain't bodkin l'mazonos. Exactly the opposite. Someone comes in and he wants clothing and he also wants food. You do a little bit of research when it comes to providing with the clothing, but you don't do the research. But you don't do the research if all he's asking for, or when he's asking for food. And again, he buys him a svara, but he buys him a kra. I can give you a svara and I can give you a pasuk. He buys him a svara, I come at sarale, but I look at sarale. It's just the exact opposite. The bottom line is this guy he's in pain right now. he's hungry. So he's hungry, give him food, right? And the guy doesn't have clothing, so again, he can wait a few, hours for you to make your phone calls and make sure that he's a worthy candidate. And he buys him a crop. I can also provide a pasuk. Which pasuk? This exact same pasuk. Hello paros lachmecha. Right, you break bread paros la'alter. Again, with a samach this time. You do it right away. He doesn't have that drasha. Karina, like the way you read the pasuk, right? Not parush, but paros. And v'hasam ksiv kisira arum kisiso kishiyir lecha. Not when it appears to you, but I guess once you've done your diligence and you see that he's an arum and he's someone that deserves it. So it's kind of fascinating. You have Machlokas Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda looking at the exact same pasuk, and they reach opposite conclusions about when are you supposed to do your diligence and when do you not have to do as much due diligence. Tani Kabazed Rav Yehuda. There's a brisa that supports Rav Yehuda. Amar Kasuni. If a guy says any clothing, both can acharav. You have to do a little bit of due diligence. Parnasuni says, give me food. Ain bodki. You don't have to do as much due diligence. You can just feed him. Tanan Hasam. The Mishnah over there. Where is over there? Over there is in Peah. So Ain Poksin La'ani Ha'over Makom Lamakom Mikikar Bepundian Me'arbasin Besela. What does it mean if a person says, you're going to give, the Gabbai Tzedakah is going to give money, tzedakah, how much does he need to give? He needs to give a loaf of bread that costs a pundian, when a pundian can buy when the price of wheat is 4 sa besela. If you go through, there's always these Rashis throughout Shas that go through all these numbers, exactly what this means. But the point is, it's the loaf a certain size, and it needs to be able to feed someone for 2 meals. That's kind of the thing. So tikar
is it time or it's
per day.
Per day.
Per day. It's a loaf per day. So that's why it's a loaf a certain size. When the price of wheat is X, then that much wheat will bake a loaf that's the right shear. So that's kind of what's going on.
But
you look at
per weight of that person.
Very good. Or if it's a family, exactly. I'm sure there's a cheshbon. Yeah, exactly. But there's always these Rashis that I read and I just totally take for granted that someone else is like doing the work. But the point is that Rashi is right here. Let's say a person has to stay overnight. So no, you have to make sure he has what he needs to stay overnight. My pronunciation, what is this? Amar Papa, Puria, Ubesaria. It's a bed, it's also a pillow. Shabbos. So we just said that the loaf of bread is 2 meals. What if he's staying over a Shabbos? No, mazon shalosh udos. You got to add another suda, right? You got to give him mazon shalosh udos. Tana im hayamachzer alap sachim. Fascinating halacha. If the guy is going door to door, he's got a green card. Ain is kakenlo. So then the Gabbai Tzedakah does not need to give him, which is obviously very counterintuitive. But Rashi says the guy can take care of himself. He's able to go door to door. So the Gabbai Tzedakah doesn't have to give that sort of person. You have to give the person that really can't go door to door. But of course, this opens the door for people to say, oh, maybe he's not legit. If the Gabbai Tzedakah is not giving, right? So on that note, Ahu, Anya, that there was a certain Ani, the Havamaster al-Psachim, the Asach made Rav Papa. So now he came to Rav Papa, Lo Mizdakikle, Rav Papa, who was, I guess, the Gabbai Tzedakah or whatever it was, he was in charge, and he didn't want to give this person. So Amarle Rav Sama, Bereds, Rav Yebel, Rav Papa. So this person said to Rav Papa, Imar Lo Mizdakikle, if you don't give him, in the Shachrina Lo Mizdakikle, Lemus, this guy should just die, no one's going to give him. So Amarle, the Bach adds the word, Amarle, Rav Papa responded, but Tanya, we have a brisa, Mayani Master Lapsachim, Ain is Kakalo. So the person responded back to Rav Papa, Amarle, Ain is Kakalo, Lamatana Meruba. Upon this Kakalo, Lamatana Muetas. You do have to give him something. You do have to show that he's legit. You don't have to give him that much, because again, he's going to be getting money from the community, but you still have to give him something. Okay. Amar of Asi says this is the minimum shear that a person has to give to fulfill his mitzvah of tzedakah. La'olam al yimna adam atmo milatis shlishis hashekel b'shana. The absolute minimum shear is a shlishis hashekel every year. So we're familiar with the machazis hashekel. That's what you have to give to to the Beis Hamikdash for all the karbanos sibur. So this is less than that. This is a third of the shekels. And Namar, and this is a pasuk in Nehemiah that Madu Aleinu mitzvos. This had to do with the Berek Habayis, which I guess the Gemara is saying is kind of similar to tzedakah, and the minimum share that I think people had to give for Berek Habayis was a shlishus and a shekel, and they're basically saying that's similar. That's the minimum that you'd have to give for tzedakah. But Amar of Asi shkula tzedakah connected kol mitzvot. You see from this pasuk that tzedakah is equal to all of the mitzvahs in the Torah. Shnemar, the manu aleinu mitzvos. It doesn't say mitzvah. It's only referring to the mitzvah of giving to the Bedek Habayis. And yet the pasuk says mitzvos. Mitzvah in Ksivkan, ela mitzvos, to teach you that the mitzvah of tzedakah is shpula keneged kol mitzvos she b'Torah. So Siman, the next few Gemaras, you have a Siman, Gadol, Mikdash, and Moshe. Amar Rabbi Lazar, and this next Gemara is brought to you by our good friends at Cosmash. So Amar Rabbi Lazar, Gadol ha-maseh yoser min ha'oseh. The person who causes someone to give tzedakah, our ambassadors, they are even greater than the people that give the tzedakah. So it's a little. I sent this Gemara. I sent this to our little ambassador chat, our the Kins Cosmash committee. The Nemar, because the pasuk says, and this is a pasuk in Yeshaya. This is a pasuk in Yeshaya. V'haya ma'aseh hatzedakah shalom, v'avodas hatzedakah hasheket u'betach ad olam hashket v'betach ad olam. So the pasuk says, this is a pasuk in also in Yeshaya. A lot of Yeshaya today. Pasuk in Yeshaya. So the ma'aseh tzedakah, Rashi points out, it didn't have to say ma'aseh tzedakah. It could have said v'haya hatzedakah. Ma'aseh tzedakah, it teaches you that the person who causes someone else to give tzedakah, he is zocha to shalom, and the people who actually give the tzedakah are zocha to hashket and betach. So it's what do these words mean? I mean, I get similar ideas to shalom, tranquility and security. But the point is, shalom is obviously a better, higher madrega than these things. So therefore, it's better to cause someone else to give tzedakah than to be the person giving the tzedakah. Obviously, all of it's very good, but you can see that again, there's the shalom is reserved for the person who causes someone else to give tzedakah. Zacha, if a person is zocha, right? A person has mice and whatever it is, he's zocha. So then halo harus raiv lachmecha. If a person is zocha, and the idea of this next Gemara is that I guess everyone by Rosh Hashanah, right? Everyone knows how much money you're going to be spending. But the point is, if you're zocha, so at least the money that you spend goes towards valid tzedakah, goes towards breaking bread with the poor. Again, it's fascinating that when the Gemara quotes that same pasuk, it's with a sin, which again, the pasuk is with a samach. But either way, so if you're zocha, then you have tzedakah, right? Your money goes to the aniyim. Lo zacha, it's the next part of the pasuk. But aniyim merudin tavi bias. The aniyim that are moaning or that are wailing will come to your house. But the way Rashi understands and the way the Gemara understands is that this is not referring to real aniyim. This is referring to the government. So if you're not zocha, you're going to spend the same amount of money, but the government's going to be taxing you. It's not going to be the aniyim that are collecting this money. And Amarlu Rava lebenei Mefuza, Rava would say to his folks in the Bnei Mefuzah, he would say, "But I'm begging you, Ose behadi adadi, be kind to one another, give tzedakah to one another. Because if not, the government's going to raise the tax. You're going to lose the money anyway. You're just going to pay it in taxes. You're not going to pay it in tzedakah. So at least work together, be kind to one another, give tzedakah. Everyone's going to be the same in the same place, but at least everyone will at least be giving tzedakah, and the money will be staying, in our community." But Amar Rabbi Lazar, Bisman Beis Hamikdash Kayam, when the Beis Hamikdash was up, Adam Shokel Shiklo, Umiskaparla, a person would give his machas a shekel, and that would be his kapara. Achto She'im Beis Hamikdash Kayam, Im Osin Staka Muta. If you give the Staka, wonderful. The Im Lav, Bain Ovde Kochavim, the Nolim Bizros. The same idea. That if not, you're going to lose the money anyway, but the government's going to raise the taxes and whatever it is, and you're going to be left without the money. This is a fascinating line. Even though the money's going to pay the taxes, still, on some level, that counts as tzedakah. Tzedakah is the pasuk again in Yeshaya, but again, I'm not entirely sure what the pasuk, what the context is. But again, the point is that even if you lose this money, it still on some level counts as tzedakah. So this next Gemara, again, if Yoel gives me a plot and it's a Gadata, there needs to be a Tumah Vatara element in this in this Gemara. So here's where it's going to be. Or heavy math, exactly. So Amar Rava says, "Hi Milsa Ishtayli Ula Mishagesh Orchase Diime Mishmeid Rabbi Lazar." So Rava says that a person told me a halacha Mishmeid Rabbi Lazar. Who was this person? So the person's name was Ula Mishagesh Orchase Diime. Ula, who kind of debased the actions of his mother. Now this was not Ula, the Amora Ula. Rashi says this is Olel. This is like a child who debased his mother, and this is a reference to Rav Sheshes. So basically, what Rava is saying, I heard a halacha from Rav Sheshes in the name of Rabbi Lazar. The Gemara is going to ask, why did Rava refer to Rav Sheshes this way, as a child that debased the actions of his mother? But before we get there, again, Rava said a halacha from Rav Sheshes in the name of in quoting Rabbi Lazar. Was this Gemara? My dechsiv vayil Oh no, I'm going to butcher the pasuk. Ozzy, I got to be careful. Vayilbas tzedakah k'shpirion. I wore my tzedakah like a coat of armor. So if you watch these old movies or Game of Thrones, one of these things, you see armor is not like a coat of metal. It's like a series of these, not plates, but like nails or something. There's a word, nail, something like that. It's like a coat of like mail, the chain mail or something like that. So Lomer Lecha Mashir Zakol Klipa, Viklipa, Mitzrefes Shirion Gadol. Every single one of these males on their own is not that big, but you put it all together and it creates a lot of protection. Aftsaka, Kol Pruta, Upruta, every single Pruta on its own doesn't do much, but Mr. Refes Lecheshben Gadol and Rab Chanina Amar Mehacha Ukabeged Izim Koltzitko Senu. That sukkah is like a beged, ma beged zeh kol nima v'nima mitzrefes beged gadol. Just like a beged, every one of the threads, again on its own, it's nothing, but it combines to create this beged. So now the Gemara says again, Rava. We open this by saying he was quoting something from Rav Sheshes, but he called him Ula Mishagesh Orchasei Deimei, this child who debased the actions of his mother. So Amai Karule. Ula Mishagish Archasei Ime. Why did Rava refer to Rav Sheshes as Ula Mishagish Archasei Ime? So now we're going to get the story, and this is the Taharos portion of the daf. Debai Mine Rav Achadabai Bar Ami Mir Rav Sheshes. Rav Achadabai once asked the following kasha to Rav Sheshes: "Is minayin lemitzora v'mesi puro shemitame adam?" How do we know that a mitzora, while he's counting? So we know that the entire process of the Mitzorah is complicated. I'm never in Shai Mikra and get up to Tishrei Mitzorah, so I never know the process. But the point is, sometimes he is in his Yimei Chaluto where he's got confirmed Mitzorah. There are times where he's not as sure, and there are times where he's on his recovery, so he does certain karbanos with the birds, and then he's got to wait 7 days, and then there's another element of whatever. So that's the part that we're talking about right now. He's done his bird karbanos. Now he's still in some sort of quarantine for 7 days. How do we know that in that 7 days, his Yimei Sipuro, if he touches someone, he can be Mitame Adam? Rashi points out that in his Yimei Chaluto, it's obvious. This is not as obvious, but we know the halacha is that he can be Mitame Adam. So the question is, how? That is the question that Rabbi Chadabai presented to Rav Sheshes. And Amar Lo, Rav Sheshes responded, oh, sorry.
He brought the korbanos, but he became tahar, but he had to brought the korbanos. It's kind of like a
but I think he still has to like shave again. There's a whole process. He's got to do a whole sort of He's passed the taras part. He's done the birds. Yeah. But how do we know that in that time period, the 7 days, that he could be matame adam? That's the question. So Amar Lo, Rav Sheshes responded, "Hola matame begadim, matame adam." The pasuk says he has to wash his clothing. But the fact that we know that he has to wash his clothing is matame his begadim. Clearly, he's also matame adam. So Amar Le, Rav Chadabai responded, "Dilma kuma bechiburim shiny." How do you know? Maybe when you wear clothes, that gives you, the clothes is more connected to the tama, and therefore the clothing becomes tummy. By you touching someone, that doesn't mean you become tummy. And how do I know there's a difference between clothing and people? I have a precedent. This is Rav Chadabai talking. Da hesit nevela. When it comes, if you carry a nevela, the matame begadim, you have to wash your clothing. But matame adam. Just because you carried a nevela, you're not tummy enough that you can be matame a person. So too over here. Amar Le, Rav Sheshes responded, the Ella Sheretz. But how come when it comes to a Sheretz, the matame adam? We know that a Sheretz is matame adam. Minal, and how do I know? Lav mishum the matame begadim. Isn't it because a Sheretz is matame begadim? And we know that. So therefore, I can tell you, this is Rav Sheshes talking, that if something can be matame begadim, it must be able to be matame adam. But Ozzy, I'm sure you're thinking this Amar Le Sheretz. What are you talking about? Sheretz refers to pasuk. Oh, ish you got b'chol Sheretz. So Rav Sheshes said, you're right. El shivcha zera, not Sheretz. Shivcha zera, a bal keri, right? The matame adam minal. And how do I know that a bal keri, if he touches another person, he can be matame? Lav mishum dehol matame begadim matame adam. A bal keri has to do laundry on his clothing, so it must be that he can be matame adam. But again, Rav Chadabai responds, he said, Amar Le, shivcha zera nami behed yaksiv be. It's also a first pasuk, not as mafresh, it's the drasha, but the pasuk says, oh ish. This is the pasuk in Vayikra, but that's referring to the Balkari himself. But the few words before then, it says, if you touch anyone, right? Oh, it's the O that says that if you're about carry and you touch someone, so again, it's not as a first, but it's still a drasha. Oh, ish l'rabo says an ogea. So again, Rav Chadabai is kind of responding in kind to all of these rise or Sheshes wants to bring, and we still haven't resolved the actual question, which is this Mitzvah in the Mesi Puro. How do we know that he's Matame Adam? But in the meanwhile, the Gemara digresses for a second. Rav Chadabai, when he was responding to Rav Sheshes, he must have been smiling or laughing. He did something that rubbed Rav Sheshes the wrong way. Chalish dieted Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes had Halishas Adas. And we know that sometimes we see stories like this where when these people have Halishas Adas, it creates all sorts of trouble. And Ishtik Rav Achadabai Bar Ami, the Ishtikar Talmudic, and the Rav Sheshes' Halishas Adas had an impact on Rav Achadabai. He became sick, he forgot his learning, something along those lines. Asya Ame, so Rav Sheshes' mom must have felt really bad about this whole situation. So she came, V'chabachia Kamei, and Tzavcha V'lo Ashkes, she really tried to get Rav Sheshes to daven on his behalf, and he wouldn't listen. So Amrale, so she exposed herself, she opened her shirt, and she said, Chazi, Lahani Chadai, Dematzis Minayu, look at, my chest that you would suckle on when you were a baby, have the same Rahmanas on him. And this must have had an impression on Rav Sheshes, by Rachme Ale, so he did in fact daven the Itzi, and Rav Chadabai had a refuah. But the bottom line is the fact that he kind of debased his mom, the fact that she felt that she needed to do this, that's why Rava referred to Rav Sheshes as Ula Mishagesh Orchate Deime. So I was about to say a fascinating thing. I was listening to a shir when I was yesterday in the car, and the guy pointed out that we know Rav Sheshes was one of the Sheshes of Yosef, they were Saginar, they were blind. So what is she saying? Well, clearly he was not born blind. I think there are some Gemaras that talk about why they became blind. But it's an excellent observation that Rav Sheshes, again, later in life became a Saginar. Okay, either way, Udasan Allah, now that we came upon this kasha from the Mitzorah, Minalan, bottom line, how do we know that a Mitzorah in the Yemei Sipuro can be Mitame Adam? Like we have a Bryce or Shim ben Yochai Omer, Nemar Kibos Begadim, the concept of Kibos Begadim is found in Yemei Sipuro. The Nemar Kibos Begadim Yemei Saluto, Mala Halan, just like when he's a confirmed Mitzorah, Mitame Adam, Afkan Mitame Adam, it's a Hakish. Okay, moving along. Amar Abelazar said, Gadol ha'oset tzedakah b'seiser, someone who does tzedakah b'seiser is greater yoser mi Moshe Rabbeinu. He's even greater than Moshe Rabbeinu. Dilu Moshe Rabbeinu in Parshas Ekev. Moshe Rabbeinu, it said he was referring to, I think, the Egel Azav, and it says, Ki agarti, I was nervous with ha'af v'hachema. I was nervous from the af and the chema of Hakadosh Baruch Hu. V'bi'ilu b'oseit tzedakah. When it comes to people who give tzedakah, it says, Ksiv matan b'seiser, someone who's matan b'seiser, yichap af. He can what's the word? He can not turn back. He can pacify. He can pacify Af. So here Moshe was nervous about the Af and the Chema, and someone who's matan b'seiser, he can pacify the Af, the Shoched, b'chei, and someone who gives b'chei, which I think is another reference to someone that gives b'seiser, Chema Aza. There's also strong anger, but the way he darshans the pasuk, it's like a matan b'seiser, the yechapeh, the pacifying goes on both the af and the chema aza. So Moshe was nervous about the af and the chema, but someone who's a matan b'seiser is yechapeh af, and it's also yechapeh the chema aza. Someone who's a matan b'seiser can pacify.
Because the recipient, you don't create that heart of af.
Exactly. So the point is, someone who's a matan b'seiser, even greater than Moshe Rabbeinu. Again, I'm sure there's some fine print. Don't run with this, but either way. But upliga Rabbi Yitzchak. But Rabbi Yitzchak argued on that way of darshaning the pasuk. Rabbi Yitzchak, he reads it more kipshuto. He says, "Af kofet." A matan b'seiser, he can pacify the af, but the chema ain't no kofet. But it's not going to pacify the chema. Shnemar b'shochei b'chek. If you put it in the shochad, if you put it in someone's chek, again, another example of matan b'seiser, chema aza, there's still going to be this strong chema, meaning af al pisha shochad b'chek, even though you did it b'seiser, chema aza ika, chema aza, there's still going to be strong chema. So the point is, the bit of a machlokas is, if you're matan b'seiser, are you only pacifying the af, or are you also pacifying the chema aza? Okay, either way. So the first person said, you do, and that's a raya that's even greater than Moshe Rabbeinu. The second one says, all right, maybe it only pacifies the af, but not the chema. Okay, Ika da Amri, Amr of Yitzchak, called Dayan from the same pasuk says, any Dayan should notel Shochad, any Dayan who takes bribery, maybe Chema Aza La'olam. He brings about Chema Aza La'olam, Shenamar, pasuk, Shochad, B'chek, Chema Aza. Okay. But Amr of Yitzchak, call Hanosein, Pruta La'ani, anyone who gives a Pruta La'ani, Misbarech, B'sheish Brachos, you're blessed with 6 brachos, and if you comfort him with tvarim, with words, misbarach b'yadalef brachos. So in addition to just giving the money, if you are nice to him and you help him out, and you're friendly, whatever it is, exactly. So then you get yadalef brachos. And the interesting thing is,
Yeah, but then it's not the same.
then you're right. Then it's not b'seiser, exactly.
Right, you lose that dimension.
You lose that. The funny thing about this next Gemara is it doesn't quote any of these psukim. It's very short.
Right.
If you look at the Bach actually lists a lot of these psukim. These are all the same psukim in Yeshaya that we talked about earlier. So I know it's hello, Peros. This is the pasuk about breaking bread. Aniyim merutin tabibayis, and the moaning aniyim. Kisera arum. You clothe them if you see them arum, and then that's the end. But if you look in the art scroll, if you look in the Bach, he quotes it's all these psukim from Yeshaya. It's Parak Nun Ches, and it's psukim like I was gonna say. I mean, I'm not gonna say. I looked in the Nach and it showed it, but it is the it appears to be the Haftorah from Yom Kippur. So it's like psukim Zion Ches and Tes. Look in the article, you can break it up a little bit. That's how you get the 6 things. And then it says v'hamafayis b'dvarim misbarich ba'achas asrei brachos. If you're mafayis b'dvarim, you're blessed with 11 brachos. Shenemar again the tavik the right. Nafshcha b'nefesh b'tana b'tasbiyah zarach b'choshev orcha. All these psukim v'ilta b'sarayim and nachasham tamid b'sbiyah b'tzachtzachos nafshecha. Again, it's the next few psukim. It's psukim yud aleph yud beis, and you break it up a certain way. There's 11 brachos in all of this. Okay. Last words on the line in the 4th line. Ba'amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Ba'amar Rabbi Yitzchak. My dechsiv rodev tzedakah v'chesed. Someone who pursues tzedakah v'chesed yimtza chayim. He's going to find chayim tzedakah v'kavod. He says, I don't understand. Mishum the rodev tzedakah, because you pursued tzedakah yimtza tzedakah. You're going to find yourself in a situation where you need tzedakah. That doesn't make any sense. If you're rodev achar tzedakah, if you pursue opportunities to do tzedakah, Kadosh Baruch Hu mamsi lo mos. Hashem is going to make sure that you always have the money to be able to give the tzedakah. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu mamsi lo b'nei adam ha'mahu ganim lassos lo tzedakah. That Hashem is going to make sure that the tzedakah that you give are people that are deserving, that you can get the schar. These are psukim in Yirmiyahu. Thank you. So Yirmiyah was very upset about certain people. Rashi kind of talks about what they did. And he davened to Hashem, and he said, "Amar Yirmiyah, Kadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono Shel Olam, afilu b'shashka kovenes yitzran, umavaksim lasos tzedakah lebenecha." These awful people, even when they decide they want to do the right thing and they want to give tzedakah, hachshilem, right? Make it bad for them. B'nei adam she'enimu ganim bishlo yikavlu le'en schar. Make it that the people that come to collect the tzedakah are not even worthy, and therefore they're not even going to get the mitzvah of the tzedakah. So again, the earlier pasuk said that if you give tzedakah, if you pursue opportunities to give tzedakah, one of the shittas was that Hashem is going to give you the money to be able to do the tzedakah. The other one is that the people that you give the tzedakah to are going to be worthy of the tzedakah, and therefore you'll get the mitzvah.